Welcome back to the second part of our alt floor analysis. This one is a bit shorter as it only covers 3 floors instead of 4. If you haven't watched part 1, the link is down below, where I cover everything from the downpour to the ash pit. I want to give a huge thanks to Kilburn, one of the lead Repentance devs, for coming to the last video's premiere. Thanks so much, man, and sorry for dumping on the ash pit so much. Remember to drop a like and a comment if you enjoyed this video, and if you're feeling up for it, leave a sub as well. The number may seem arbitrary to you, but to me it means a ton. Anyways, Mausoleum time. For a lot of people, this will be the same kind of disconnect that Mines and Ash Pit have, with one being super fun and the other being awful. And yes, while Gehenna is quite literally the hardest floor in the game, it is far from awful. In very large contrast to the Mines, every tile, rock, barrier, and enemy placement here feels deliberate, like you stumbled upon some secret, ancient cult. And yes, while the things here feel old and creepy, the floor still feels very lively. Like these bishops and flaming knights are guarding something. This place is very active, but also very dangerous. The Mausoleum reeks of cultism, from the enemy names and just the general visuals. This place looks like what it is, a crypt. But instead of everything here being dead, it's alive. I think for me, it's where a lot of the feeling of creepiness comes from. With the purple flames and lighting, enemy names, and one of the bosses literally being a cult leader, it's hard to not draw the comparison. Let's go a little deeper and look at these enemies. Baby Begotten, a demon baby that floats towards you and fires short-range brimstone. A tier, new design, cool idea, and very threatening. Cultist, besides having a cool-ass name, they shoot rag megas balls around the room and revive other enemies. S tier, what a cool concept, a reviver/healer in Isaac. Blood Cultist. Besides having an even more cool-ass name, this guy shoots creep lines at you and can trap you in bone snares that pop up from the floor. S tier, even cooler than the last guy. Revenant. God, why are these names so cool? Basically, he's a bony with a flamethrower. Definite S tier. Quad Revenant. A flamethrower bony that shoots in 4 directions at once. Who would have guessed? S tier. Cursed Death's Head. It's a normal Death's Head with an aura of fear around it. If you get caught in it, you will not be able to shoot for a few seconds. A cool concept, but I feel that the aura is just a bit too big. B tier. Viz Fatty/Fetal Demon. These two spawn as a pair and are killed at separate times. The baby is stuck to the Viz Fatty and lashes out at you. If you kill the baby first, the fatty then bounces around the room with a brimstone attack. If the fatty is killed first, the baby kind of works like a mini Gemini. S tier. Everyone complains about how to dodge this guy, but it's very clear where he's gonna go. I've never had an issue. Whipper. He's a guy who sprints at you, and when you're in his line of sight, takes a pretty big horizontal whiplash at you that spans about 3 horizontal tiles. Cool enemy and can make for some pretty fun and tense situations. A tier. Snapper. Like a whipper, but the whip goes outward instead of the side. They can pretty much cover half the room with it. And while yeah, they aren't the worst if you stay out of sight, being caught off guard by one that's more than 4 tiles away is super annoying. B tier. I think if they would only lash if they were like maybe 2 tiles away, it'd be better, but as it is now, it's a bit too easy to trap yourself. Flagellant. Imagine a whipper on steroids. Once this guy sees you, he relentlessly chases you down, going as far as to even reflect your tears sometimes. This guy almost fits better as a mini boss. Luckily, he's pretty rare, so I don't gotta worry about him too much. I'll say B tier. Kinet. Those pod guys from the downpour? Yeah, they're psychic now and they're pissed. Super cool and great telegraphs. I love them so much. They're so cool. S tier. Cursed Globin. A Globin that upon death splits into 2 piles of goo, which on reformity even more Globins who have less health each split. This enemy is super cool. And yeah, it is based off a different enemy's design already, and while I do enjoy my unique designs, he adds a super cool new mechanic to said enemy. And a lot of the rooms you find them in have alternate ways of killing them, like spike blocks or even bombs. Because of that, I'll give him an A tier. Poofer. A dude who floats towards you, swells up, and then gets faster. However, they only move when you move. When they die, they shoot out 6 tiers, and have a puddle of creep that heals other enemies. It's a really cool support enemy design, A tier. Vice versa. Wanders around the room and will shoot homing brim shots at you. Why are the enemies' homing brim shots so good? The beams can bend all the way behind the Viz. There needs to be way less range on these guys. You can't even tell where they're going to end up shooting. As it is now, definite D tier. Candler. Floats around the room and switches directions when it spawns a flame on the ground. Easy enemies, pretty much just filler, B tier. Bishop. It shields every enemy in the room and shoots out cross shots when it's damaged. Really cool idea for an enemy, I love it. S tier. Lil Portal. Spawns spiders and flies until it's destroyed. Literally added just to replace the void portals from Afterbirth Plus, because everyone thought they sucked too much, even though they weren't really that bad at all. The old portals can only be found on the void floor now. Really easy fix and a good choice, B tier. And that is all of the Mausoleum enemies. Overall, I'll give it an A for enemy design. It probably has the most unique designs we've covered so far, but a couple enemies that could use a lot of work bring that rating down. As for the overall aesthetic and floor design, it gets an S. This might be the coolest looking floor in Isaac after the Gehenna, and does the best job in Isaac I've ever seen of combining trap mechanics like the new teleporters and enemy placement. Wonderful floor, might be my new favorite floor in Isaac period, definite S tier. Now it's time for its opposite, the Gehenna. This may be the most controversial opinion on this list. Now, while the Mausoleum and Gehenna share a ton of assets, the Gehenna has quite a few different things going for it. That main thing being an abundance of trap rooms. The Gehenna introduces these new traps called spike balls. These things rotate around their set blocks, and the room you find them in usually requires you to navigate through them to press some buttons. I think this floor definitely took a lot of liberties and toes the line between feeling Isaac-like and feeling like a little bit much. But not feeling like Isaac isn't necessarily a bad thing. When you get a new update to a game, you don't want more of the same, you want freshness, but more on that in our conclusion. Anyways, Gehenna is tough. Like, really tough. If you're going to lose a run-winning amount of health, it would be on this floor. And after playing through this floor exclusively while scripting this video, I'd like to examine why. First of all, you cannot play Isaac how you would normally on this floor. Typically, Isaac is a very guns a-blazing run-in and shoot game. The Gehenna punishes that. There are quite a few enemies who can just straight up reflect your shots or render them useless, making you actually have to think about what you're shooting, which surprisingly isn't a very common thing in this game. So when every other floor in this game is more reliant on you just holding the fire button down and walking into a room, it tends to make getting used to the Gehenna a bit more of a struggle. We Isaac players aren't very used to this level of trappage, or these kinds of enemies. Everything on this floor, including the enemies you kill, are like kind of little puzzles, and honestly, that's great. Being a speedrunner, I tend to never ever want to slow down on anything in Isaac. I like going fast, quick, and reckless. Which is why when Repentance first came out, I had a really hard time adjusting to this floor. It makes you wait. And because it's all new as well, it also makes you think, which I haven't done on Isaac in quite some time. Because I find Corpse to be a pretty average floor, I'll give a quick summary of my thoughts so far right now. The alt floors being difficult is not the game's issue, it's a player issue. AB and AB Plus made some big changes, such as new items, nerfs, buffs, and new enemies to encounter. But none of those updates compare to the sheer size of Repentance. Once you played a couple of runs of any of the previous updates, you kind of just understood everything, because at the end of the day, it was all still familiar. The enemies were designed very samey, the items were really good, and there wasn't a lot of mental fortitude needed. Repentance changed so many of the game's core mechanics you can't keep playing like it's Afterbirth. You gotta play it like it's a new game. I think that's why a lot of veteran players, myself included, were a bit hesitant to enjoy Repentance initially. Because yes, these changes were annoying to learn, but you gotta understand that mostly every change made here was for the betterment of the game. So stop being so salty about these new changes and enjoy the new stuff that we actually ended up getting. Like, okay, for real, why do you care if Brimstone does a little bit less damage every single tick? There are quite literally 7 new floors in the game to explore, hundreds of new pickups and items, and 2 new story bosses that are actually the most interesting bosses in this entire game. Enjoy the new stuff that we got. So, TLDR, Repentance is a new game. Stop being so stubborn to relearn Isaac, you'll stop struggling so much if you do. Anyways, back to Gehenna. Let's look at these new enemies first. We have the Goat, who aimlessly walks towards you and either dashes or shoots 3 tiers at you, usually found in herds. Not bad, not super interesting, but honestly a really cool design. B tier. Black Goat. Same thing as a goat, but can also fire a quad compass brim shot if in line with it. I like these guys better than the goats for that extra attack. A tier. Maze Roamer. Shoots eyeball tears at you, and has a copy of itself on the opposite side of the room. When one dies, the other starts chasing you. Super cool design, a little hard to deal with, but I love the design application. A tier. Brimstone Death's Head. An invincible enemy that fires 1 brimstone beam at you at a time, and dies when the room ends. Cool enemy. It adds an extra thought layer when you're dodging enemies in a room. A tier. Black Knight. Randomly moves around the room, and charges at you when you're in his line of sight. If you shoot him in the front, your shots are deflected back at you. Like I was saying earlier, this floor punishes you for just running and gunning, and this enemy is a good example of that. Not to mention, super intense to fight. B tier. I wish they had a bit more of a cooldown after they attacked you, they're a bit long to kill. Morningstar. Like the Poofer, it floats towards Isaac and only moves when Isaac moves. It gains speed the longer that you move for. I'm gonna have to say C tier. Even though you can't stop moving, it is usually paired with a Brimstone type enemy, forcing you to move, which would make this dude be insanely fast with catching you off guard. Manageable, but a bit frustrating. Moculus. Bounces around the room while you're shooting. S tier. The perfect trap room enemy. While this floor has a top tier S aesthetic, some of the rooms are a bit brutal. You literally always have to be watching your 6. and your 3, and your 9. Okay, watch your whole damn clock then. And yeah, while this floor is supposed to be a gauntlet, certain things push it a bit too far over, so overall, Gehenna, I'm gonna give you a C. You never really want to see this in a run, but it's definitely surmountable if you take your time. I said earlier that I find Corpse to be a pretty standard floor, meaning that I do enjoy the floor and the enemy design. The overall feel of this floor is empty and devoid. The rooms that you enter that only have traps or spike balls in them make this place feel even emptier, like you're walking around in a dead place. I guess the better word for this floor is desolate. Now there are some big boys in terms of enemy design down here, so let's go through them. Wrinkly Baby. Dashes towards you then fires 3 shots when it stops. A tier. It combines 2 basic enemy attacks to make one fairly new and fresh enemy. Unborn. If telefragging was an enemy, it would be these guys. It floats around you, and will eventually teleport behind you. B tier. While annoying, they're very easy to kill. Puzzle. Like a spider sac, but upon death it spawns maggots. If it grows up all the way, it becomes a bloody fly. I'm gonna say A tier. While we see a lot of enemies like this already in Isaac, it has some pretty unique quirks. Poison Mind. Moves diagonally and places creep behind it and explodes upon death. While this sounds cool, it's surprisingly basic and super annoying. They can easily box you in and leave you with no way out, especially when explosions are about 2 to 3 tiles big. C tier. Gutted Fatty. Pretty much a mini boss. He spawns other enemies, spawns peep eyes that pretty much home on you, and creates geysers of tears when it dies. This guy is tough and barely manageable. Not only are his attacks annoying, he also has an insane amount of health. Even the best runs that come down here can get hit by him, whether it be post-mortem or just mortem. C tier. While it's nice to have tougher enemies, man, this guy is a lot. Sick Boomfly. A bombfly that trails poison gas and explodes into 6 shots. I'm gonna have to say B tier. Same issue as the poison mine, but this one creates a bit more of an interesting room dynamic. Mama Fly. Creates puzzles. That's pretty much it. Kinda lame, doesn't do much, B tier. Rotten Gaper. Again, just walks towards you. While there are other variations of the enemy in the game, at this point in the run, you're too powerful to even see them. B tier. Twitchy. Half spider, half boy. These guys alternate between lunging towards you and walking towards you, and they're honestly not that bad to kill. It's cool to see some more hybrid attacks in the game. A tier. Level 2 Gaper. Like a regular Gaper, just walks towards you normally. When it dies, however, it twists into its body and its head, both which shoot maggots at you. It's pretty basic, but it's still kind of fun to fight. B tier. Gas Bag. Spawns army flies and is surrounded by a gas cloud. A lot of enemies just spawn other enemies down here. While that isn't that lame of a trope, I wish Mortis did their own thing. C tier. Cohort. An undead monster that spawns 4 glowworms on death. D tier. I somehow always manage to get telefragged by his death split. It's almost unavoidable if you're in the wrong place. Cyst. Rolls around attached to walls and shoots at Isaac. Again, nothing original here. It's just another hybrid of 2 attacks, but 2 lame ones at that. C tier. Dead Meat. Just a womb enemy reskin. There's nothing new here. C tier. Adult Leech. Basically a super leech. Can burrow into the ground, slam down, or charge really, really fast at you. Another one of those mini boss enemies, but this one feels like it's done right. A tier. Evis. Tethers you and swings you around. Actually a really great assist enemy. Makes for some super cool pseudo trap rooms. A tier. And that is all the new enemies found in the Corpse. Although the enemy design is a bit lackluster, the floor makes up for it with some really clever room design, traps, and overall desolate feel. Overall, I'll give it a B tier. And that is my overall in-depth review of every single new enemy and floor in the game, minus Ascension. That's going to come in a different video. So, to answer the burning question, do the alt floors feel like Isaac? Well, no. And I'm glad they don't. This is the most entertaining update to Isaac thus far, because the formula was switched up. It is such a breath of fresh air. Now sure, we all would have been happy with more of the same, some regular floors, some new items, and maybe a new final boss. But after a while, it definitely would have blended together. I mean, how many of you could separate Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus content with absolute certainty? Items, bosses, enemies, not many could do it accurately. With Repentance, it feels new, separate, fresh, and as a result of that, so much more fun, and so much more entertaining. Maybe it doesn't feel 100% faithful, but it is definitely 100% more fun than any other version of the game. Now, I don't hate Afterbirth by any means. I put the most hours of my game in the original Afterbirth, but you have to admit, it did get super stale after a bit. Especially with Afterbirth Plus just being again more of the same. I think the alt floors are my second favorite feature added to Repentance. They're challenging, offer great rewards, and spice up the game an insane amount. But that begs the question, What is my new favorite feature in Repentance? Long-time channel viewers may have a bit of an idea of what it is, but more on that next time. Remember to leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed this analysis. It took a lot of time to make, and it helps support me more than you know. As a quick side note, next video is going to be a bit different. It's going to be a showcase and a guide on how to fight every new and old boss in the game, so look out for that. But until next time, gamers.